Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the life of someone who really needs no introduction, Werner von Siemens, the father of electrical engineering. We're coming up on the 200th anniversary of his birth, and yeah, with this new biography out, I think we've got the perfect opportunity to really dig in. And trust me, this isn't just going to be like, okay, he invented this, then that.
Oh, no, none at all.
This is about understanding, like, how does a farmer's son
Right.
become this pioneering inventor, but also, like, a really sharp businessman,
Yeah.
all while the whole world's changing around him.
It's a remarkable story. And yeah, you're right. Born in 1816, Siemens comes of age right when the Industrial Revolution is really kicking off.
Yeah.
So you've got all this change, all this upheaval, and his life, it captures both the incredible opportunities, but also, all the challenges of that era.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Big family, 10 kids, not exactly rolling in money, were they?
No, not at all. They struggled, definitely.
Not exactly what you picture when you think, oh, this kid's going to grow up to be a captain of industry.
Or would you? But it's amazing how those struggles actually set him on his path. His father, even though they didn't have much, he believed in education for his sons. He knew knowledge was power, even in a world that was like, get out there and work with your hands.
Practical skills above all else.
Exactly. But university, out of the question, too expensive. So Siemens, he finds another way to learn. Military training.
Military training. Not exactly the first thing you think of when you're talking about, like, groundbreaking inventions, is it?
It may not be. That training, it gave him this really strong foundation in technical skills, discipline. At the same time, it's actually feeding that scientific curiosity. He had that natural, wanting to figure things out.
So he's learning about artillery and, like, building forts, but he's also soaking up physics and chemistry.
Oh, yeah. Math, too. It's all connected, these things that seem totally separate. They're what lay the groundwork for everything he invents later.
It's almost like the perfect combo. Theory meets practice.
Exactly. And this is something I find really cool about the Siemens story. It's not a solo journey, is it? Family plays a huge role.
Huge role.
And I'm not just talking like, oh, they're cheering him on from the sidelines. This is like full-on family business dynasty stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Siemens brothers. Essential to the success of Siemens and Halske, the company. I mean, take William, for example. Instrumental in selling Werner's first big patent for a gold plating method.
The gilding method, right.
That's the one. And that success early on, it really showed them, hey, working together, we can take these inventions global.
So it's more than just, brotherly love. These are business partners, each with their own, set of skills they bring to the table.
Exactly. Carl ends up in St. Petersburg, another brother in London, another in Dresden. They're building this network decades before anyone even dreamed of the internet. Really.
They called it, I love this, fraternal room communism. Not just about family, but also about how powerful this close collaboration was for a company that's going international.
I mean, that level of trust, that understanding you can only get with family, got to be invaluable, especially when communication takes weeks, not seconds like today.
No question.
And speaking of communication, we got to talk about the invention that really puts Siemens and Halske on the map, the pointer telegraph.
Yeah, now this wasn't just, oh, let's copy what other people are doing with telegraphs. Siemens, he improves the design, makes it more reliable, which means ultimately more successful.
So how does it work?
So instead of Morse code, dots and dashes, you have a pointer that moves across a dial, stops at the letter being sent. Imagine it's like a typewriter, but connected by electricity.
So that's where the pointer part comes in. Makes sense. Pretty clever for the time, but man, starting a company based on something that's still basically just an idea, that's got to be risky, right?
Oh, it was a huge risk. Yeah. You've got money problems, people don't want to invest, the tech itself is complex.
Yeah.
But their belief in the invention, their sheer determination, that's what keeps them going.
But it's not just about building the telegraph, right? They got to lay the infrastructure, too.
Literally, yeah.
And these early submarine cables, notoriously difficult to install.
Oh, tell me about it. Shipwrecks, financial losses, even sabotage. It's all there in the biography.
Wow. Sounds like a thriller novel.
It was a battle, for sure.
But Siemens, he doesn't give up.
No, he develops this whole theory about cabling based on his experiences in the Mediterranean.
And that theory, it turns out, is super important for those later transatlantic cables, the ones that really connect the world.
Absolutely crucial.
And we can't forget the context here. They're going up against giants like John Pender, the cable king. This guy controls a huge chunk of the existing cables.
Oh, yeah. a major player.
So for Siemens to succeed, it's not just about inventing, it's about outsmarting these powerful
It's
rivals.
like a global chess match, played with technology.
I love that analogy. And it seems like Siemens, he's always pushing, always facing down challenges. Which brings us to what is arguably his biggest breakthrough, the invention that really changes everything. The
Well,
dynamo?
this is where things get really revolutionary.
Hmm.
Before this, electricity, it's mostly for communication. The dynamo, invented in 1866, that's where we harness the power of self-excitation of electricity.
Hold on, gotta stop you there. Self-excitation. In simple terms, what are we talking about here and why is it such a big deal?
Okay, imagine a machine that makes electricity, but it doesn't need batteries,
Oh,
doesn't need permanent magnets. That's the dynamo. It uses this feedback loop, starts with a tiny bit of magnetism, just a little bit, left over in the iron core.
okay.
That little bit creates a weak current, which makes the magnetic field stronger, which creates more current.
So it's like building on itself.
Exactly. It just keeps amplifying itself until it's at full power.
Whoa. No wonder scientists were freaking out about that.
Oh yeah, the dynamo, it's the foundation for electric light, for electric motors, eventually for whole power plants.
The world we live in today, basically.
Pretty much.
And to think, the first house in Germany with electric light, Siemens' own villa.
That's right. Charlottenburg.
Talk about eating your own dog food, right?
Definitely.
Amazing to think one invention could have such a massive ripple effect. But as we've seen, Siemens, he wasn't just a brilliant mind, he was also a real businessman, figuring out these international partnerships, dealing with rivals.
Right?
And that drive, that belief in science, that's what shapes not just his life, but history itself.
And that's exactly where our deep dive continues. We'll be looking at how Siemens, the inventor, becomes Siemens, the industrialist, the champion of science and industry.
Stick with us, folks, because we're about to see how Siemens's vision goes way beyond any single invention, how he changes the whole landscape of innovation in Germany and beyond. So we've seen how Siemens revolutionized daily life with his dynamo, but his story doesn't end there.
No, not at all. He wasn't the kind of guy to just invent something cool and then, sit back and relax.
He had this drive to keep pushing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He wanted to build, to create, to foster this whole culture of innovation. And you really see that when you look at him as an industrialist, not just an inventor.
So we're talking factories, workforces, the whole shebang, dealing with all the complexities of running a huge business.
Exactly. And he approached it all with a really unique perspective. Like in 1872, he set up this pension, widows, and orphans fund for his employees.
Wow, that's way ahead of his time, especially back then when, workers' rights weren't exactly a top priority.
Right.
What made him do that?
Well, I think it goes back to those early financial struggles we talked about. He knew what it was like to worry about security, about taking care of your family.
Yeah.
So this fund, it wasn't just about being generous. It was strategic, too.
How so?
It helped him attract and keep skilled workers. It fostered loyalty, stability within the company.
Right, makes sense. Happy workers, stronger company. But his vision, it went beyond his own factories, didn't it? He was also instrumental in shaping Germany's patent laws.
Oh, absolutely. He understood that strong patent protection. That was key to encouraging innovation. And it wasn't just about protecting his own inventions.
He was thinking bigger picture.
Exactly. He was advocating for a system that would benefit all inventors, drive technological progress across the whole country.
He really understood how science, industry, and government, how they all fit together, didn't he?
He did. And this big picture thinking led to one of his most important legacies, his vision for a state institute for experimental physics.
So instead of just building machines, he was thinking about building institutions.
Exactly. He believed that scientific research, to really thrive, it needed dedicated space, free from the pressures of making money.
A place where scientists could just focus on, pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Exactly. And his vision, it eventually led to the creation of the Physikalische Technische Reichsanstalt, the PTR. It became a model for modern research institutions all over the world.
So he's not just inventing things, he's laying the groundwork for future generations of scientists and inventors.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It's like he understood that innovation, it doesn't just come from individual brilliance, it needs collaboration, institutional support.
And that foresight, it really speaks to his character. This was a man driven by a deep belief in the power of human ingenuity to make a better future. And that belief, it fueled his global ambitions too.
And speaking of global, we have to talk about his drive to connect the world. literally, through his telegraph lines. And one project really stands out, the Indo-European telegraph line.
Oh, yeah, that was a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Thousands of kilometers from London to Calcutta, across mountains, deserts, different countries, all with their own politics.
I can't even imagine the logistics. And this is way before the internet, before any of the communication tools we take for granted today.
Right, but somehow they pulled it off.
How?
Meticulous planning, strategic partnerships,
Yeah.
and a lot of perseverance for sure. And of course, there was that fraternal network we talked about earlier.
Having his brothers stationed all over the globe, that must have been a huge help.
Absolutely. William in London, Carl in St. Petersburg, Walter in Tehran. It was a real family affair.
Wow. But they weren't exactly working in a friendly environment, were they? The competition in the telegraph industry, that was pretty cutthroat.
Oh, yeah, it was fierce.
Yeah.
John Pender, the cable king, he was a serious rival, controlled a big chunk of the global network. Siemens had to constantly innovate, constantly adapt, just to keep up.
The biography even mentions sabotage. It makes you realize how high the stakes were.
It does.
This wasn't just about good ideas. It was about business savvy, knowing how to maneuver, make deals, outsmart your rivals.
Exactly. But through it all, Siemens, he never lost sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
He believed in scientific rigor. He believed technology could benefit humanity.
He wasn't just in it for the money or the fame. He wanted to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And that's part of what makes his story so compelling.
But behind all the inventions, the business deals, the global ambitions, he was also a man who experienced real joy and real sorrow. The biography talks about his first marriage to Mathilde. It's a tragic story. She died of tuberculosis.
It's heartbreaking. And you have to imagine what it was like back then, suffering from a debilitating illness with very few treatment options.
And the separations while she was in sanatoriums trying to get better, away from her husband, her young children.
It must have been incredibly difficult for the whole family.
It reminds you that even amidst all this incredible achievement, life can still throw you these curveballs. But it also shows the power of love, of family, to help you through it.
Yeah.
Even with all the challenges, they built a loving home for their children, found happiness in the moments they had together.
And after Mathilde passed away, Siemens found love again. He married Anthony. And this time, he experienced a level of happiness and stability that he hadn't really known before. They built a rich life together, surrounded by family and friends. They shared a passion for the arts and sciences.
So even while he's changing the world, he's finding comfort in human connection.
Exactly. And that duality, I think, is what makes him so fascinating. He was full of contradictions. This brilliant inventor, but also a shrewd businessman, a loving husband and father, but also driven by his work. A visionary who sometimes clung to traditional values.
And those contradictions, I think they make him more relatable, you know? He wasn't a perfect hero. He was a human being, figuring things out as he went along.
Right.
And as we go deeper into his life, we see this interesting tension emerge between his belief in the power of innovation and his evolving views on the stock corporation.
Yeah, this tension between innovation and the stock market, it really comes to the forefront in Siemens's later years. Here's this guy who's all about pushing boundaries, changing how industries work. But when it comes to the stock market, the very thing that often fuels that kind of growth,
He's hesitant.
he has his doubts. It wasn't that he was against wealth or expansion. It was more about control, about making sure his company stayed true to his vision.
So it goes back to those early days with his brothers, that fraternal room communism we talked about.
Exactly. That close collaboration, that was at the core of how he saw himself as an industrialist.
Bringing in outside investors, giving up some of that control, it felt like a compromise.
Yeah, I think for him, the stock market, it represented a different way of doing business. One focused on short-term profits, speculation, not the kind of long-term vision he had for Siemens and Halsk. He worried that outside investors, they might push for profits over the company's commitment to innovation, to doing good for society.
So it was about protecting his legacy.
And the company's values, its identity. And this tension, this back and forth between his entrepreneurial spirit and his reservations about the stock market, it reflects a debate that's still going on today, right?
Totally. How do you balance needing money to grow with staying true to your vision? It's something a lot of companies struggle with, even now.
Especially in today's world with venture capital, IPOs, this constant pressure to grow, to keep shareholders happy.
Makes you wonder what Siemens would make of it all.
Oh, I think he'd be blown away by how fast technology is moving, how global everything is, the sheer size of the financial markets. But yeah, I bet he'd have some strong opinions about how much emphasis there is on short-term gains. versus building something that lasts, and how all that focus on money can actually stifle real innovation.
It's fascinating to think about, but even if we can't know for sure what he'd think, his story gives us a really interesting perspective on these modern-day challenges.
Right. It reminds us that progress, it's not just about inventing new gadgets. It's tied to economics, to social values, to the choices we make individually and as a society.
And that's what makes Werner von Siemens such a compelling figure, isn't it? He was more than just an inventor, a businessman, or an advocate for science. He was this complex individual living in a time of huge change, and he left behind a legacy that's still shaping the world today.
Absolutely. His story shows us the power of human ingenuity, the importance of collaboration, and what can happen when you have a bold vision.
It's a reminder that innovation, it's not a solo act. It's a team effort, fueled by the belief that things can get better, that we can shape a brighter future.
So the next time you turn on a light, ride an electric train, or you're just amazed by how connected we are in this digital world, think of Werner von Siemens.
The farmer's son who dared to electrify the world?
His life, his work, it's a powerful reminder that we're all carrying on his legacy, in a way. And as we face the incredible possibilities and the challenges of our own technological age, maybe we can learn something from his unwavering faith in the power of innovation to light the way forward.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that curiosity. Until next time, fellow deep divers.